Welcome to Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Bobby Pominville, and I'm your reporter on the arts. We're going to go into the arts a little bit today, and we're going into a new area, and it would be for our guest. I'd like to introduce you to Karen Evenson. Welcome to our show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
She is an owner of Catherine Michael Associates, and she is a business consultant. And I found out she's also an author, so we're going to cover all of that in this interview. This is going to be fun for me, Karen.
Good.
So you have an interesting background in the business world. Could you share some of your experiences with us?
I'd be happy to. I would say that I'm lucky, but I'd rather think that I've just had so many opportunities. I've traveled all over the world, working with different companies, different organizations, different people. And currently, right now, I'm working with a company that's actually out of Bakersfield, California. However, the people that I work with on a weekly basis are in South Africa, Australia, Chile. They're in Argentina. We have some in Spain, and then all of the western side of the United States, too. So I do a lot of coaching via phone and working with them. So that's just kind of what I'm doing right now, in addition to working with different companies across the country, too.
Well, how does that work with translating?
It depends. You know what? It's amazing, and I'm glad you asked that, because when I was in China doing work, it seems that we're almost in isolation as far as America. We don't always do as many different languages as we should, and yet as I travel around, most of the people can speak fairly fluent English and are happy to do that.
Yes.
And so I learn a little bit of their language and respect it whenever I'm in their country, obviously, because I'm their guest. But it's so fascinating because they like to try their English, too. And they'll always say, when I was in China, they would say, I think this is the word, and they would try it, or they may mispronounce it, but it was always exciting. So.
Well, that's commendable that they would do that.
Absolutely.
That's great. What a great thing. Now, tell us a little about China.
China was one of my favorite places. First of all, it's a long way over there. Oh. And flew into Beijing, and a little quick story about that. The Beijing airport is tremendously huge. And they have very few signs in English. And so they have a lot of universal signs. So, of course, the first thing, I was with a lady who was working with me, and we were looking for a water closet. I will use that from all my time over in England. And we had to keep on looking for one that had a female symbol. And we found it, and we walked in. And I hope this isn't going to be too much to tell you, but they just have squatting holes.
Oh,
yes,
my.
yes. I was saying that too. I think I did say, oh my, or some other things too. It was a new experience, and I thought, well, welcome to China. Yeah. And then we spent an hour trying to find our next flight, which was a domestic flight, and there were no signs in English, and no one spoke English either. So it took us over an hour. Luckily, we got on the flight, flew into Beijing, and then that's where we spent a week. And I was just honored to be there working with an entire group of people.
Oh,
and I happened to be the instructor because I had written the materials, the book that I was using there, and working with all the leaders.
Oh, that's so fascinating to hear that. Now, is that one of the books that you're going to tell us about?
It really is not. It was more of a leadership book. It's a different one I brought, but it was one that was strictly about leadership, because that's what it was about. Yes.
And everybody needs that. So I can see where there would be quite a demand for you.
Well, I think so. It seems like it. And that's what I found, that all different companies also have that demand for leadership. And one of the things I do say in this book that we'll talk about later is we need to define leadership. It's not about a position. It's not about a name. It is about the way we interact with people, because we should be getting the best out of people at all times. And so as I do coaching with CEOs and all different levels of management and leadership in all different areas, next week I have 5 different interviews, or actually coaching episodes with people in the healthcare. And so I work with healthcare, I work with manufacturing, I work with one group from Germany that I was working with was doing their own thing, and I was over there working with them as they were designing, if you were going into a brewery or something. I had 20 years of experience with Anheuser-Busch all over the world.
Oh, yes.
And so if you would go into a brewery and you would see all the mechanical things, how the bottle lines go, I worked with a company who designed those, and you're traveling with And so I was just so excited. So wherever I
Interesting.
go, people are people, and that's what I love. And it's the same thing about getting better communication going and better leadership. And so that's
Yes.
what I really do.
Oh.
And then on the side, probably my main thrust is also creativity and collaborative problem solving.
Oh my goodness, I could see where there'd be quite a demand for you. And just think of it, all over the world.
Yeah, it's exciting. It really is.
So you work a lot in England too.
I do. I used to spend, oh gosh, I don't know how many months a year over there, to the point where when I would fly back in, they would say, welcome home, which was kind of scary. That was at the hotel where I always stayed.
Yeah.
They'd say, welcome home. I said, there may be something the matter with this. I'm spending my life here. It was exciting working with, because it wasn't just working with the people in England, but we would have Scotland, Ireland, and then the company I was working with had people from Spain and from Germany, and so I worked with all of their vendors at the same time too. So it was just exciting to see how everything came together to make this business run, and what was needed to do this, and the communication that was necessary.
And then I forget, but did you mention where you're based now?
I'm based in Hudson, Wisconsin, and absolutely love it.
Goodness.
6 years ago, my husband and I moved from Chicago. My husband's family is in this area and in southern Minnesota, and my whole request was just to be near an international airport, and MSP works perfectly.
That is so convenient for
It
us
is
here,
wonderful.
isn't it?
It's great. We love it. We
those are
love Hudson.
Great stories. When I first met you, and then a little bit later, you were speaking to the Hudson Women's Club.
Yeah.
And I believe it was about leadership.
It was really about creativity.
Oh, yes, because we had to create. I
Yes,
remember
you did.
that.
Yes.
And you introduced an activity that involved everybody.
Yes.
And we had to work together.
Absolutely.
Yes. Tell us just a little bit about that.
Well, and that's basically what this book is. My book, Redefining Fear, is.
Yes,
It's called
yes.
Maximizing Limited Resources with Unlimited Ideas. That's the
Right.
subtext. The entire concept when I wrote this was I was up in the air on 9/11 in a plane going all to the West Coast and experienced all that people did through that mess. But when I came home, I said to my husband, everybody that I'm talking to at every level in companies, and what I'm seeing on TV is everybody's making decisions based on fear. And we have to redefine that, because we have to do a correction or else it's not going to work. And that's where this came. My husband actually said, so you want to redefine fear? And I said, yes, I do. And he said, then why don't you write a book about it? So that really started me thinking about everything. And so I started thinking about what we need to do. And one of the things is, when I say, to maximize limited resources with unlimited ideas, that so many companies that I'm able to work with are always talking to me about, oh, we have a shortage here, a shortage there. Oh, we got to watch our money, which makes sense. So what I say is, why don't we tap into the ideas that you have in your workforce? And we can do that through creativity and collaborative problem solving. So I was in England studying with my mentor, Dr. Curtin, who actually designed a way to measure creativity, the Curtin Adaptive Innovative Inventory that I utilize. I'm an advanced practitioner of that nationally and internationally. But what we found out is everybody's creative. So that's what we talked about, because creativity knows no gender, no culture, no age. It's all about what's inside of us. Right. And when I talk to you, I know how creative you are. And so when we did that day, it was fun to work with women of all ages, because I really tapped into every audience I work with. I try and tap into who the audience is. And I knew that whether these people were professionals like you and I as females, whether they had been homemakers, it didn't matter. We'd all use creativity. And so we started doing things. And if you remember, the first thing I said is it was something called forced association, where what you do is take something that has nothing to do with the idea that you're trying to brainstorm, and you come up with, oh, here's some characteristics. So for example, and I don't have a pencil with me, but if I had a pencil, I would say to you, how is a good interview like a pencil? What would you say? How's a good interview like a pencil?
Well, it's a tool.
Very good. It's a tool.
For getting your communication across.
Ah, it's good. It's for communication. It should have a sharp point about it. What's the point of this interview? It should also be something down to earth, because everybody knows how to use a pencil. There's even an eraser. So if we mess up, we can just go back on the tape.
That's true.
And what I do with people is start having them think in those terms, even around problems, because that's what I'll say. And especially when people are stuck, when we're brainstorming, I'll say, so you're telling me you have this problem. How's it like my pair of glasses? And they go, I don't know, maybe we need a different lens. And I said, maybe you do. Maybe you've got the wrong magnifying. Maybe you're not looking at it the right way. Maybe you need, and so we start talking about it, and they start laughing, but they start getting it. I do that around customer. I do a lot of customer service programs too, and we talk about that. So getting back to when I was with the women, we had so much fun because I had just put out a series of small everyday items.
Yes.
And I mean, they were just little plastic cups and other things, you know, pieces of paper, and we had some forks and just all kinds of things. And if you remember, we had people working as a team, and I said, I want you to create something usable out of this and name it, and then show us how you were going to use it. The energy level went up so high.
Oh, it was just amazing.
It really was. And what I saw too, it didn't matter what age we were. It was all of us giving our ideas, our input, and working together. It was phenomenal. And every team came up with something different. And as they did, every team would go, well, we didn't think about that. Oh, that was wonderful too. And so it's just leveraging off of creativity. And when you do collaborative problem solving, all of the ideas are there, and you can bounce one after another, and that's where you get to the answers. So that's what I do.
Wonderful.
So that's, and I actually wrote the book for creativity and business innovation and taught the class for 8 years at Anheuser-Busch across the country and then even internationally.
Wow.
So
That's
a fantastic company, fantastic. And I worked with every division. I walked alongside the Clydesdales in parades.
Oh.
I worked in all of the theme parks. One of my favorite was San Diego.
Oh, neat.
SeaWorld. But within all
I
of
do
those,
love that. I've been there.
it's wonderful. I love it, and the people are
That city
great.
is one of my favorites.
Me too. So, you know, so creativity and leadership flows across everything.
Yes.
It really does.
Yes. It's just, I know a lot of people say, well, I'm not creative.
Yes.
I can't do it. I just don't know what you need or want.
Yeah.
But you just had us all going.
And that's
it was
true.
just amazing.
And I just say to people, you are creative. It's just how you may be creative.
Right.
Only I think we tell ourselves we aren't because we automatically assume you're a singer. I don't, oh, you don't want to hear me sing. You know, I don't play the piano. And I consider that a creative art. You know what it is. My mother was a painter. I don't paint. You know, I think we each have our own gift, and that's what we found that day. We tapped into our gifts and leveraged. And the moment we leveraged our gifts, it was amazing what happened.
It was just something I never would have thought would happen at Women's Club.
And it was fun. And everybody laughed.
Such fun.
I mean, we really did. And that's when I go out and I speak to groups, that's what I want to do. I know the Chamber of Commerce in Woodbury last year asked me to speak at their first women's conclave. And they asked me to speak about laughter. And I said to the lady, I've never done anything on laughter, but I think I can come up with something.
Oh, wow.
So I did research, and I came up with 7 health benefits of laughter.
Oh, yes.
We had so much fun. I had the audience involved in everything. And I would sing a silly song just to get started, and somebody would finish the words. And it was amazing how they would do it. And then I would say, so what do you do to break up, you know, the stress at your office? And this woman said, actually, we do sing. So I had these 2 women come up and sing, and we had so much fun. The whole point was, you know, sharing. And just really looking at each other and saying, we're all in this together. We're all alike.
Yes.
And I think that's the most important thing. Wherever I go in the world, everybody's really alike. We just may speak a little differently, look a little differently, but we're all alike.
Oh, that's a great concept. I just, you know, I was thinking about my teaching days and how they should have brought you in. Because that would have been so nice, because sometimes I found that people didn't want to work with other teachers.
Right, yeah.
And they were very centered on their own area and their own goal.
Yes.
And that really didn't go so well.
No.
It just wasn't the most appealing job in that way. But not that I'm saying it was always that way, but it just was nice to be able to work together.
It is. And when I work in organizations, I find that too. We call them silos because people get rewarded for the performance of their silo.
Oh,
And
yes.
so a lot of times they don't want to break down. So I do a lot of process improvement with companies too, which is all part of collaborative problem solving. And that's one of the things we say, you have to break down the silos. This is an organization. And so one of the things that I've done, and I've done this just recently, I have a 50-foot rope. And I'll spread it down the length of a large room, larger than this room. And I'll say, okay, and I'll pull somebody, and I'll say, down there, you are our customer. And what are you expecting from us? And they'll name a product or whatever it is, a service or a product. And I go, okay, that's great. How many people out here does it take to put that product or service in their hand? And I will make them pick up a piece of that rope. And we put that entire pipeline, and all of a sudden they're seeing it. Then I always said, okay, now here, who's the most important? And they go, everyone. I go, exactly. There isn't one person on this entire pipeline that isn't important. So I said, I want you to look downstream. I want you to look to the person who gives you something that you have to act on. And I want you to ask each other, what do I do that makes your job easier? What do I do that makes your job harder? What challenges do I create for you? And maybe we start having a dialogue.
Yes.
And when we do that, and it becomes very visual, and I talked to the CEO later, and he said, I went out and I bought a rope. And he said, sometimes when I'm having some of my meetings, I'll just lay the rope out. And he goes, do we need to have people on the rope again? And he goes, because that's what it was about, getting them to talk to each other.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, so I do a lot of very visual things because I think people learn that way too.
Yes. Oh, I think that's a great way to draw people in.
It really is.
Wonderful
Yeah.
answers.
Good.
Okay, now we'll try to move on a little bit. Tell us about your expertise with speaking to groups and promoting leadership or change or innovation or whatever. You've been dwelling on that a
Yeah.
lot. Anything else that we've kind of missed or?
I don't know.
You did say how much you enjoy public speaking.
I do, very much.
And you're very comfortable with it.
I am very comfortable with it, and
I
people
think that
I'm
makes
crazy.
people comfortable too.
Well, I think it does too. And it doesn't mean that I don't have I had nerves before I got here today.
Oh, sure.
I mean, we all
Yes.
do, because I think that energy really makes for a better performance.
Yes.
Because every time I'm up
Yes.
there, in a way, I'm performing. And I don't like to think of it like that. But I know one of the questions you asked me is, so what do you think about? The first thing I think about is the people I'm going to talk to.
Right.
It's not about Karen, because that should be the least. I'm just a vehicle for information, and that's how I view myself. So I really think, what is it that I want them to walk away with? Is there some information? Do I want them to think? Do I want them to enjoy? What is it? How many people do I want to get actively involved? Because there's nothing worse. I've sat in audiences and you have speaking heads, and people go to sleep. And I'm not a person who allows you to go to sleep. You know, I get you very actively involved and call on people. And I think that that's part of it, because I relax the more people relax and the more fun we have. And I can be very spontaneous because things happen that you never expect. You know how it is. All of a sudden, your video doesn't work or whatever it is.
Oh, yeah.
You just
Things
go on. And as a teacher, you know that too. And so you just have to be prepared. And I always figure too that, what's the worst that's going to happen? What is the worst that is going to happen? And this is a short part of my life, but if I can enjoy it and give something back to someone else, that's all that matters. It really is.
Yes.
So whether I'm talking to a very large group, I talk to groups of 500, it just depends. You know, I remember one of the worst ones that I ever had. I was the last speaker of a long day, and it was for the state of Illinois, because I work with federal and state and local governments also. Mm-hmm. And we were downstairs at a very large conference area in a hotel, and it was freezing. They had it so cold with air conditioning, people were just shivering. And so I thought, this is crazy. I'm the last speaker. They don't want to hear this. I mean, all they want to do is go home. So one of the first things I said is, is it cold enough in here? Would you like him to set it down a little bit more? And they all started laughing. And I said, I don't know about you, but I am freezing. I don't know how you could sit here all day long. I said, so why don't we just stand up for this? Does it make it any easier? And they all laughed and people started applauding. And I said, I'm going to promise you something else. They told me that I need to speak for 45 minutes. I'm going to cut this at 30 minutes. I'm going to give you all the information you need, but you look like you need to go out and warm up. Now they start cheering, and I say, do I have your attention? Then let's rumble and let's go. And I became I walked around with them. I also had people come up on the stage with me so that there were people constantly moving, active. And somebody said to me afterwards, probably one of the kindest compliments I ever had, I forgot how cold I was.
Oh, that's nice.
And so, you know, I think about that as I go out to speak. What's the situation going to be like? You never know.
Wow, and you handled that so well, or you would have had people tooting out.
Oh, of course, or leaving.
Amazing.
And I wouldn't have blamed them if they would have left.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not an insult to me.
True.
It's an insult to, you know, the environment they're in. So, yeah. So,
Yeah, oh, that's perfect. And you really do address your audience
well, thank you.
very well.
Thank you.
Well, we're on the part now where I'd like to hear about your future plans and what you're going to be doing. And I know you have another book you're talking about writing, or you're in the midst of writing.
I'm in the midst of writing. It's called Danger Thin Ice.
Ooh, that sounds like a good title.
I think it will be, and it's kind of the way I look at my whole life. I think probably I've always walked on thin ice in many ways.
Oh,
And probably because I've pushed the envelope many times. I've spoken up when maybe people thought I shouldn't have. And so it's not me, but it is me. You know, I'll cleverly disguise it so nobody could ever recognize the main character. But it's going back in my life and it's telling some of the stories, only having her live through it. Examples of some of the phenomenal things that I've had. I was working at a small college. I was a director of a program for several years. And one of the things we did was work with people who had lost their jobs. So I was working with Title II and Title III employees. And they came to us and we were retraining them. So my heart was really into this. You know, I get into helping people. I had the most wonderful staff. And one of the things we were offering was armed security guards. Armed security guards. And I had a state policeman, I had a detective from a local company, and then I had a retired detective who had his own agency. And they were my instructors. So I didn't have to know anything about it. They were going to walk us through everything. And the first night, of course, we had to advertise this, and we only had maybe 25 seats for it, and about 60 people showed up. And I thought, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? I have to find seats and everything. And one of the detectives, Glenn, he won't know I'm talking about him in this, he said, I'll take care of this real fast. He walked in, he goes, how many of you are felons? And the people looked around, he goes, I will have your sheets in front of me in 5 minutes. We accept no felons. 20 people walk out. He goes, how many are in? He asked a couple of the questions. We got right down to it. Everybody settled in real nicely. It was really good. He goes, I told you I could take care of this real quickly.
Oh
So
my goodness, I never would have thought of that.
Me neither. We had so much fun, though. I learned so much, and I qualified with a 357 Magnum with everybody else.
Oh, good
And we were those were enjoyable people. They were people that had jobs and lost them through no fault of their own, and were trying to get back into a marketplace that the jobs they lost had gone away. The industries had gone away. So we were trying to give them some life skills, and that was part of it too, life skills. Because it wasn't just learning how to shoot a gun, although most of them knew how to shoot guns, but it was life skills. And we had this one lady, an African-American woman, she had 3 or 4 children, and she had been on public aid, and she wanted to be a security guard. Ooh. And we started at 6:30 p.m. She didn't know what p.m. meant, so she showed up 6:30 in the morning and sat. I saw her on the steps. I was always there by 7 o'clock. And I sat down with her and I talked to her and she goes, I'm here for the training. And I said, oh, that's tonight. I'm sorry we didn't make it clear. What I didn't know was that she couldn't read.
Oh my.
And so we would uncover those types of things too. So we then referred her to a class, you know. She eventually got her GED. We were able to put her through that, and she became an armed security guard. And I look at things like that, and she was so proud that she was going to be able to support her family and that she had a program like this. And I think that's what it's about when you're really helping
Yes.
people too.
Yes, and you know, there's a lot of need for that.
Oh, there is tremendous need.
I
It
mean, when you
is.
think about all the people that have lost jobs and you
Yeah.
hear about this, and it's like they don't know where to go. They don't know what
No,
to do.
They don't. Unfortunately, that particular program went away. There's other ones that are out there. And I just feel so strongly about that, you know, the
Yes.
helping people. That's
Oh,
kind of what
that
I'm
was
really about. So, yeah, so I've had a lot of fun.
Excellent
So
story.
those will be kind of things that get woven into the new book, Danger Thin Ice, because there's a whole lot of other stories that I won't tell on this particular channel.
Okay. Well, are your books available in the bookstore or
Not-
Amazon or something?
I don't know if Amazon still has them. They
Okay.
did, but they could definitely get a hold of me because I absolutely have some that I would be happy to.
Oh, yeah, and we'll put
Yeah.
that information on
Okay,
the
good.
screen, too.
Good. So
But now, we haven't mentioned your second book.
my second
Should we
book,
just talk about that a little?
sure, it's called Don't Step on the Ducks. And it was co-authored with a gentleman that I used to work with. He actually had been my client at one time. And ducks, in this case, are all of those pesky things in an organization that if you've ever been around ducks and you throw food out to them, they quack, 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 they go crazy. They quack and everything. So I came up with this as it was a metaphor for going to work, and you're in your own little pond, and you have your little ducks, and everybody has their own little space and everything. And it is amazing how you can step on ducks, and when you step on one duck, and what's the duck you step on? You stepped on somebody who you made a comment and they didn't like about it. That's a duck. It's a policy, could be a duck. It could be so many different things are ducks. And you don't know it sometimes. You step on it and then everybody starts quacking. And so the concept was we have 5 principles of leadership and how to avoid stepping on the ducks. Because also ducks leave messes behind. And sometimes in leadership, you have to clean up the mess. And that's why you say don't step on the ducks or anything else because it becomes a mess. And so we really talk about that too. And that's fun too because I designed, and we haven't used it for a while, an actual game that when I would deliver this, I would have people come on stage with me and do, walk around to see how they could avoid ducks. And so they draw cards, and take 5 steps forward. Oh my gosh, look at this. You went above your boss's head and now he's upset. Oh, go back 10 spaces. So it was things like that. And people would go, this is so real. This is realistic. This is what it's about.
It's things that happen.
Oh, happen everywhere. It can be in a school district.
Oh, yeah.
It can be in non-for-profit. It can be at church.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be anywhere there are people. And that's why I said the metaphor is just working with people. It doesn't matter. If we're in a non-for-profit, if we're working in accidentally step on a duck when we are working with somebody in our club, it's all those things. So
That sounds like a very good book, too.
it is, yes.
So really, you have written some excellent guides here.
And that's what I think they are,
And
guides.
I really admire you for all this you've done to help people and to get people in the right place and to make people improve.
Thank you.
That's the whole thing about it.
It is. It's kind of my own personal mission statement, and I believe in that very strongly. Have a personal mission statement and live it every day.
I can see where you would be very successful.
Well, thank you.
So I wish you well, and I thank you for coming today.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. And I hope you enjoyed watching today's show. It's a little different than what I usually do, but I think there's a lot of good messages here, and we hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.